My name is Genevieve Robertson, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist with a background in environmental studies. This exhibition is called "And Even Dust Can Burst into Flames." I've been working on this work for actually since 2019, so quite a long time, and it's all produced with carbon-based materials. And I first became interested in carbon because I was really thinking about how much we hear about carbon in the media these days, connected to global warming, of course, and climate change, but also how abstract it is in a particular way. So I was interested in looking at it and looking at its molecular structure as, like, it's called the building block of life. So carbon's incredibly important for all living creatures and plants. And at the same time, this dichotomy where it's a life producer, and it also is what, in the form of hydrocarbons, what's threatening our current planet and the ecological collapse that we're facing due to hydrocarbon emissions. And these materials were all found in the Kootenays, in the East and West Kootenays. So I moved here, and I'm always interested in finding out more about particular regions, and because I was here, it felt important to learn about this area. I thought carbon was a good way into that because there is coal mining in the East Kootenays. There's also a lot of forest fires, and the remains of forest fires are, of course, charcoal. And then there's graphite mining in the Slocan Valley. I always start with raw materials and then take them back to my studio, and the first step is using a mortar and pestle to break them down. Often I actually use a coffee grinder to break down the particles even more. So I'm really working with very granular, like, chunks of material, and slowly breaking them down. And then the last step before I actually make the pigment is I'll use a muller, which is a kind of flat glass, sort of like a pestle, but it's flat on the bottom, and then I have a piece of glass, and I grind the pigment between those two glass surfaces, and that breaks it down even more. And then to bind the pigment, I use gum arabic, which is a traditional binder that's used in a lot of industrially produced pigments. And sometimes I've done a lot of experimenting. I've used casein from milk and honey, which are also traditional binders. And then when I'm working, I always work flat, and I use a lot of water. So what I really enjoy about the process is there's a lot of chance and kind of intuition built into how the process works, because I'll lay down the pigment in the water, and then sometimes it takes overnight to dry. So I come back in the morning, and the pigments have painted themselves in a way. Like, what I'm left with isn't completely of my own design, although I lay out the basic form, but the pigments kind of spread and create their own rivulets and pools, which I find to be kind of an alchemical magic process in a way. And I feel like the materials are collaborating with me a little bit. I think what it is that really draws me to this work is the intention to try to communicate both the power and the fragility of the natural world, and to bring some of these tiny minutiae that we may not pay very much attention to into the forefront. So something like a piece of lichen or a bone that has this beauty to it that I'm trying to capture through my work, as well as trying to capture the fragility of the natural world, and how, of course, we're putting it at so much risk.